Tell us about the book.
I was introduced to Jeff through a mutual friend of ours who had an idea that we could potentially, with my science fiction background in the X-Files and Jeff being a science fiction author of many #1 books, that we could get together and perhaps create something. And I have never been a science fiction reader, but certainly thought that maybe, having been on the X-Files for as long as I was, that I might have some interest or contribution there. And so we got together in New York about a year and a half ago and hit it off and started brainstorming what kind of book we might write. Were we to write a book together, discussed what our interests were. Both of us had a desire to make it a socially conscious series and to root it in current events, and also to root it in mysticism and religion, and so that's kind of where we started. And
well, it's the book. The book itself starts on the streets of New York with an assassination attempt of an Indian diplomat, and then something happens to the diplomat's daughter. Just give us a hint.
Well, the diplomat's daughter, who witnesses the attack, starts exhibiting some strange behavior, and so a mutual friend of the ambassador's, his interpreter, invites his good friend, psychologist Caitlin O'Hara, who is the main character, to discreetly come and assess what might be going on. And through the course of the book, through her research and her friend Ben's research that he contributes with, they discover that there are other teenagers around the world who are exhibiting similar behavior, and eventually that it might have a link to the ancient past.
Speak a little bit about how the X-Files, which I read was something that you originally were not that keen on doing. You were drawn to it by the strong woman role in the X-Files. How that is also...
And being out of work and no money.
Exactly. How that can affect your decision as well. How that, as almost like a career decision, but also a business decision, led to so many other things.
Well, I think at the time I didn't see that as being a business decision. It was, I wasn't in the habit of auditioning for television. But you're right, because it was such an interesting and compelling female character, like no other that I had seen or anybody else had really seen at that time on television. I decided to go along for the audition, which then led to me being cast and led to that character playing a large part, and science fiction playing a large part in my life.
It also led to movies of the X-Files. Everyone wants to know, is there going to be an X-Files 3? Do you know?
I do not know. There is discussion. Things are percolating, but...
would you like to do a third?
David, I, and Chris, our executive producer, creator, all are interested in coming together again in some format.
Now, what do you think about Netflix? What do you think about how that whole change of being able to get anything on demand without necessarily a big intermediary?
Well, it's what we want. It's what we expect. You know, the Fall will come out in the UK as a weekly series, and people will wait every week for it. And there is something to be said for that. But it's interesting the degree of frustration that it elicits in people now that they know the alternative is to be able to wait and get it all now.
If they want it all now, does that mean that you think artists are going to be more responsive?
More responsive in what sense?
Well, if someone says, we want you to do Streetcar Named Desire, but we want you to do it in New York, and there becomes this swell of public opinion that you couldn't access 20 years ago.
Oh, I see. In terms of whether or not, you mean to sway my decision about whether to do something. That's interesting. I haven't thought about that either. I mean, I don't know how persuadable I am in that sense. I might be more gullible than I would have.
Because you have direct contact with your fan base. I mean, you have literally that connection with people.
But if only it were that simple. I mean, obviously all the other elements would have to be in place. Maybe I could crowdfund. Yeah.
Have you ever thought of
We could crowdfund an X-Files movie. Yeah.
What if that was started, would you go along with it?
Yeah. Yes. Sure. Yes. I mean that ultimately is what's keeping it from happening. I mean, other than Fox giving the go-ahead, which is not a small issue. But yeah, crowdfunding is a good idea. But also for Streetcar, because a lot of people do actually want it to come to New York, and an element of it is the financial aspect. It does actually cost. It's a revolving stage in the round, and it's not a small deal to transport that and mount it up here. Ben Foster was in the play as well, and we'd want the cast to join. So that's okay. You heard it here. Let's start some crowdfunding for Streetcar in New York.